This is CXO Secrets, the podcast that takes you inside the minds of business and technology leaders and reveals the strategies behind their success. Coming up in today's show.
So I think AI will do more of the how, and humans need to do a lot more of the why and when. So AI is going to be great at executing, I don't want to call them scripts, but learned responses. Humans are still going to be needed to understand why and when we accept those responses, or what is maybe the best answer.
CXO Secrets is powered by EDS, going beyond connections. Find out about upcoming C-level events, experiences, and insights at edsxevents.com. And for the first time on CXO Secrets, we get to say welcome back to a returning guest, Dave Hoon from Norseman. Dave, how's it going?
Oh, it's going great. Thank you for having me again, David.
And for those who maybe haven't listened to the first time we chatted a few episodes or so ago now, just remind me about who you are and who you work for.
So my name is David Hoon. I work at Norseman Defense Technologies. I've been with the company a little over 10 years, 5 years as their CTO.
Super stuff. Now, today we're going to talk about The Edge. No, not the guitarist from the Irish rockers U2, who incidentally I found out is also a David Howell Evans, to give The Edge his full name. And The Edge can also be a 1997 survival thriller starring Alec Baldwin, Anthony Hopkins and Elle Macpherson. Again, plenty of podcasts talking about that. That's not what we're talking about today, Dave. We're talking about The Edge in terms of the IT infrastructure and that journey from the data center to the edge, the why, the how, the if, and the when. Does that sound like a plan? Are you qualified to talk about the edge with me today?
Yes, I am, and I'm looking forward to it. Thank you.
Excellent. So, to begin with, just a bit of context that I think we have to acknowledge here, because you and I have both been in the industry long enough to recognize that IT, it can be a bit cyclical at times, can't it? And over the decades, we've gone from centralized computing to distributed computing, and then back to centralized, maybe with cloud and SaaS. And now we seem to be back to the edge all over again. So, Dave, what is it that has brought us to this point in this IT sort of hokey-cokey? What's behind this current drive to the edge, would you say?
So I think really what's plain and simple data. There's so much data. We're getting smarter at understanding how to use it. And under a centralized model, there's a little bit too much latency. So with the introduction of artificial intelligence and decision support tools at the edge, there's just a little too much latency on round trip, especially in a global environment between the edge and the cloud. We've also got to consider, in some cases, for U.S. companies or the federal government, data sovereignty and ownership. And we've got to leave data really where it's generated or where it lives in some cases to be compliant with local legislation or law. In practicality, it's kind of logical to think you're going to get faster response time, faster decision support when you push compute and storage out to the edge. That's really what's driving it.
And I guess there's also expectations that I think might be driving it as well. And the fact that all of us as consumers, whether we are consumer consumers or business consumers, we now have a heightened degree of expectation that if we want something, we can get it immediately to all intents and purposes. And the things that we want now aren't just give me back that row from a database. The things that we want now are give me that really complex query, or give me that return from some AI model, some LLM return or something. We need more stuff, more complicated stuff, more quickly. And that is, again, something else I think that surely is driving this race to the edge.
It definitely is. Being able to get to real-time decisions quickly and gracefully. When there's cases where wide area networks aren't working as well as they should. Or when they're a little bit flaky or there's too much latency. So we've got to keep data where it lives. We've got to be able to really build an environment that works for the operations and the mission in the appropriate architecture.
Yeah.
There's really, the saying is one size fits none, is what we like to think. So we've got to look at each customer, each mission, and data sets, and craft architecture and applications around that mission.
So to really drive that point home, I guess, if you were starting with a blank sheet of paper and you were articulating the benefits, the key cells in the pitch for an edge, what things might you be writing down on there? And of course, like you say, you're fitting the architecture to the mission, but what are the kind of big post-it notes if you were sticking it down on a piece of paper that would be under that edge cloud, if you like?
It's really, coming from, prior to joining Norseman, I worked for the United States Department of Defense. So we always think mission first, warfighter first. So we think in terms of safety and really trying to get the mission to be successful with no casualty, no loss of life. So we've got to look at, again, the data. What information does the end user, in my case, my history, the warfighter, what information do they need to do their job successfully? And that comes from, hundreds of different sensors or data producers, whether it's IoT sensors in the field or, it's potentially cloud services and SaaS services running. It's really collecting everything into central operations that can support their decision making as rapidly and as accurately as possible. And with the advent, or really the introduction and consumerization of artificial intelligence capabilities and agentic AI, I mean, that's getting easier and easier today to deploy quickly into these environments.
So what is it that is enabling this? Of course, we've seen a lot, as we spoke about a moment ago, a lot of these movements in IT have been enabled by whether it's cloud, whether it's the kind of ramp up in compute capability. What is it, do you think, that is enabling edge now to be part of the infrastructure architecture mix?
So it's densifying CPU and GPU and NPU silicon. So faster memory, faster math processing and compute processing at the edge, whether it's, an AMD GPU or NVIDIA. I mean, you take your pick. We work with both. But, NVMe storage and putting, or memory, I'm sorry, and putting memory like on the backplane of compute. And then from communications, network infrastructure, 5G, is incredible, and 6G on its way. I mean, the bandwidth that you can get wirelessly today really enables a lot, or a big reduction in latency, even at the edge. So we can get near real time, as close to near real time decision making as we've ever been able to. And then all of those kind of put together, the proliferation of GPUs and large data centers and faster networking and backplane speeds enable these artificial intelligence companies to create very intelligent models that are easily deployed out at the edge. So it's no longer necessary to move everything back into a single application stack in the data center, process it through a standard, procedure in a Oracle or Microsoft database to produce a result and send the result back to a screen. We can get answers faster on a mobile phone today than we could 10 years ago on our desktops.
And it strikes me, you mentioned that word consumerization there, consumerization of AI, but the rate at which mobile communications technology has evolved, yes, from a consumer point of view, but feeding that back into the enterprise, 5G, 6G, those conversations are well underway right now. It means that the cost has come down. So would you agree that another enabler here in some ways is the fact that we can have high bandwidth, low latency, point-to-point communications essentially enabled by 5G technologies or the kind of non-terrestrial networks, the low Earth orbit satellites, at a fraction of the cost now to even a handful of years ago. That makes certain applications, certain deployments here now practical, now feasible from a cost perspective that surely would not have been the case even only the turn of the decade.
I definitely agree, and there's trade-offs. So I'm going to say the cost is lower to enable a capability, but it's not necessarily inexpensive or cheap.
Yep.
But there are trade-offs. So in a lot of cases, we're able to trade long-term storage for extremely fast decision making. So as we get smarter and understand our data and the decisions that we need, it may not be necessary to keep everything like we did when 10 years ago, we started really working with what was coined big data,
Yes.
where we weren't sure how to use it. We just knew we wanted to keep everything. So there's some cost trade-offs that definitely play into the mix, but it's certainly cheaper and less expensive than it was 5 years ago. And being able to get AI to my phone or to my desktop, all the AI-enabled laptops are incredible. Dell has some capabilities that just blow my mind away when I'm using, not using my Mac at work, and I'm able to play with some of the AI assistants that are available locally. It's amazing.
Yeah, and even on our smartphones now, they're equipped with 12 gigabytes of RAM on there that can run pretty capable AI models that enable on-device processing for all manner of things. How useful they are at the moment is another matter, but certainly it's developing apace, and many people who are using it don't even realize what's happening under the hood there, nor should they perhaps. A question I will ask, though, and we've seen this, you mentioned big data 10, probably 15 years ago as well. Again, just with this cyclical thing of IT, we had this whole bring your own device movement 10 or 15 years ago, where people were equipped with very capable devices, and IT departments said, well, why don't you use your own laptop? Why don't you use your own smartphone? Now, while from a cost perspective, that was very attractive, it did open up a big security challenge for those organizations. So when we start moving stuff to the edge, what does that mean from a security point of view? Surely that is also broadening the attack surface, and that would therefore have an impact on cyber risk management for the organizations that are deploying more edge as part of their architectures, their mission systems.
It certainly does, but let's not forget that we're typically, when we think edge, we're talking about moving higher processing, smarter applications to an edge where in most cases there's already been some technical capability at that location or with that user. So cybersecurity has always been a consideration. So you can't forget about facility security, physical security, and cyber training for end users. You got to keep doing that. But as you move smarter capabilities or larger capabilities to the edge, you've really got to take solace in this push to the term zero trust architecture. Zero trust architecture really puts a name and a framework around capabilities that should have always been there, but there's smarter capabilities because of a faster WAN. So whether you're talking about microsegmentation of the WAN or the LAN and isolating data, there's a lot more we can do from policy control today. So all that has to be taken into consideration, whether it's, zero trust at the user and data access file by file, bit by bit, or, talking network access and secure access service edge or SASE capabilities.
I guess there's also a physical security element here as well, though, is there not? And that's often something that it's easy to forget about. We're so enmeshed in our digital surface, if you like, that we forget that there's a physical one there as well. And whether it is having a rack of compute at a data center where there used to be a kind of network access point where there wasn't one before, that then presents an additional challenge. You know, you need to make sure that if someone walks in with a fake security pass or delivering pizza or something, now what they potentially have access to, if not the data, although maybe the data, but potentially to disrupt, that has changed. That hand of cards certainly has changed now.
It certainly has. And, you know, I said a little bit earlier that physical and facility security is definitely more important. Now, if, you know, you've got to weigh the costs and the benefits of ramping up physical security at a location. If it doesn't make sense, or it's just not feasible, maybe it's a lease space and you can't modify it to be secure enough. There are other capabilities that you can look at in terms of co-locating. So, for example, we are partners with Equinix. You can look at Equinix Metro hubs as a solution and co-locate edge capability locally with high transport or bandwidth speeds between your physical location and that co-located hub as well. But yeah, first and foremost, that first layer of defense is always going to be keeping physical intruders or malicious actors out of a facility and keeping their hands off of keyboards or off of the equipment. And then you've got to look at, you know, the logical or the cyber capabilities.
The edge isn't an island, though. When architecting target infrastructures for your clients, whoever they may be, what are the considerations that you have in mind as regards the edge and then its ability to complement centralized and cloud infrastructures and indeed operate independently when called upon as well? I guess I'm leaning into some of your previous work at the DoD, for example, when, you know, you can't necessarily rely on all parts of a network to be connected at all times.
Yeah, so I think it really comes down to, you know, edge doesn't mean that you're not going to centralize data. So it still makes sense to train decision models and AI models locally or centralized. So collecting a lot of data, training takes a ton of information, right and wrong. Systems have to learn really how they respond in situations when it's looking at the data. But at the edge, you really want to focus on sensing and decision capabilities using those trained models. And really, it's looking at what the value of the data is and sending insights and information from the edge back to centralized location where you are still going to store things to be compliant with regulations, be that whether it's, you know, a fiscal regulation or health regulation or even a country regulation. So that's first and foremost is sensing and decision tools at the edge, bulk collection of sensor data at the edge, but training is still in a centralized model.
As always, it's the right technology to fulfill the right part of the mission. And I guess building on that, then, what kind of environments and use cases are you seeing benefit from edge deployments? Because, like you say, one size all fits nobody. It's not right for everything. Where are you seeing that it is particularly applicable based on the clients that you work with?
So we're seeing it more in like contested battle spaces. So edge decision support makes sense when, again, lives are on the line. You really don't have a lot of time to make decisions and you need information. So, you know, in US today, federal customers looking at the border protection capabilities, being able to utilize camera or vision, AI, voice recognition, and other data sources to make decisions immediately on the fly at a border crossing, for example. Being able to look at, you know, in a contested battle space for the new now Department of War. I'm sorry, I've been calling it Department of Defense. I haven't made that change yet. I apologize.
At the time that we're recording, that is still very fresh news, I think, isn't it?
Yes. But for Department of War war fighters, being able to make decisions quickly on friendly or foe data, whether it's targeting or again even just base entry, and working with local contractors, being able to get the right information at the right time through a gate. And then there's also the standard industrial IoT capabilities, and be that whether it's water or heat or physical security sensors, and computer vision and safety systems and facility access controls. There's a lot of new capabilities we can make kind of in real time, looking for active threats versus non-threat personnel.
You mentioned facial recognition there, and I've been doing some work recently over here to understand more about facial recognition systems as used in retail environments to identify unsocial behavior, people identified as shoplifters, all part of retail theft prevention. And a lot of that stuff is edge enabled. You've got a lot of that heavy system, a lot of the facial pattern matching taking place in store, some stuff taking place in camera as well. So you aren't broadcasting, 4K streams across, multiple hops back to a data center to be processed. Those decisions, or at least the analysis can be performed locally. So you are sending not quite a 1 or a 0 up or downstream, but the equivalent of. Away from mission systems, what are the everyday applications that you're seeing that also sort of fit into this relatable application of edge compute?
So mission systems, or some of the things that we would try to emulate. Some of the systems that we work with, I can't necessarily get into detail of customers due to NDAs that are in place. But when I talk to customers, I often bring up some real world examples. So Uber and Lyft are great examples of edge compute capability. So whether it's a mobile device on somebody requesting a ride, or the mobile device of a driver, the information that's processed is amazing. So time to be picked up, location to be picked up, users are, ride requesters are moving potentially through an airport or through a building while they request, knowing geosensing where they're at and where they normally get picked up, and recommending a pickup location to the requester. Drivers are moving up and down the road. They're not always parked somewhere. So finding a driver that's moving in the location of that user, or potentially with the least amount of traffic that can get there quickly. That the data that's consumed and used, the decisions that are made, is amazing. And it all has to happen locally, or at least distributed through a capability. Obviously, phones aren't making a decision of who gets picked up, but it could be something like an Equinix Metro hub, where they're co-located locally in a scaled platform. Another good example that we try to emulate is Walt Disney World. So my family and I went. Yeah, my family and I went to Disney World this summer, and as you enter through the gate, you give them a fingerprint, you have a ticket, they're using facial recognition. I know I saw cameras around, and then you wear sensors all day long so they can track you. So you've got Bluetooth low energy sensors on your wrist, so you can check into a ride and use your tickets, and, lightning passes, and buy things with your credit card that are tied to it. So I can, I've heard Disney characterized as a data company and not an entertainment company, because they use the data to ensure that you're having the best experience that you can in a park. As they're tracking with Bluetooth or mobile device and with location turned on, they're able to see where people are in the park, understand if there's areas or rides that are going to be busier than others. And, they can deploy countermeasures. Think of it in that terms. To move people to another part of the park, they may fire up a band and start playing music real loud, or bring a princess or another character to some part of the park and advertise it to parents with little kids. It's amazing to think what you can do with that. And they've been doing that a long time. They're great at it. So those are anecdotes that I like to talk to customers about, imagine how you can use your data in a similar way to gain, mission superiority, or, when we talk to commercial customers to, outsell your competitor, or market a product faster, or hit the right customer. There it's, there's so many options available.
Yeah.
It's really, what do you have the budget for, and what's in your strategy and plan, what's important to you.
I love those examples you gave because they are so very relatable. Every company's a data company right now, one way or another, I'm sure. But with Disney especially, I'm laughing because it's absolutely right. I'm thinking that I'll be making my first Disney Odyssey with my family next summer, so I will certainly be on the lookout for all of the ways in which they're able to turn me into a 1 or a 0, but use that for insight and then for decision making. And like you say, if a princess suddenly appears off schedule at the other side of the park because the queues are getting busy here, then I'll understand a bit more about what's going on. What are the biggest challenges then, the biggest pushbacks, if you're working with a CIO, CTO, whoever, to come up with something that would involve deployment of some edge systems, and they take it to the board, and whether it's the CEO or other stakeholders going, this is a problem, this is a challenge. What are the biggest pushbacks that you tend to find in these cases?
So I think one of the biggest challenges is going to be, again, for customers or users that have centralized in the cloud. In a lot of cases, you can forget about operations and from a hardware perspective. When you move to the edge, especially at your own facility, now you've got distributed operations at scale. So dealing with hardware replacements, dealing with warranty or SLAs.
It's just like the olden days all over again.
Yeah, exactly. And then you end up with kind of this fear that maybe you have edge sprawl. So not everything is a great edge use case, but when edge becomes normal in your organization, it's easy to push more and more things out to the edge, and you become too distributed in some cases, and drive your operations costs higher than they should be, because you're moving things that should still be centralized back out to the edge. Those are really some of the things, and making the right decision on where you do analytics and where you do heavy compute processing, where it's not, something that can run on, GPUs and NPUs locally. But if you're doing training, making sure you're doing training and modeling in the right location.
But as always, it's a case of understanding what your requirements are, understanding what your mission is, and using the right technology, working either understanding internally or working with the right partners, of course, to make sure that you are deploying best fit technology, and now with an appreciation of what the edge is, what it delivers, what it is and what it is not. That there are more and more opportunities to deploy this right fit technology than ever before. Fascinating stuff. Dave, thank you for taking us to the edge. I'm not going to let you go yet, though, because as you know, there are some questions that we ask all of our guests on this show. And we've asked you before what your CXO secret was. So this time I'm going to ask you something slightly different. And that is this. If you were able to send a message back in time to a younger Dave Hoon, just starting out in your leadership career, I don't know, and you could send a single piece of advice back to that younger Dave Hoon, what would that message, what would that advice be?
I think first and foremost, protect your calendar. Not every meeting is an important one. Take time to ship value early, and keep working. A credo that I wish I had then was, when you're hiring, hire curious people. Maybe not the ones that are most qualified on paper, but candidates that show the most curiosity and eagerness to support the mission. Sometimes they're going to be the ones that surprise you the most.
I think if there's one word that has come up, and this is absolutely no criticism, it's just a moment of enlightenment on my side, that curiosity, hire curious people, has been a it probably over-indexes all the other pieces of advice. And I think in tandem with that, often those curious people may not have come through the traditional routes, whatever they are in IT, whatever they are in technology. Often it's a case people have come through different routes, had those squiggly careers that we're going to talk about elsewhere in this series, that the curiosity has brought them in that direction. Really good insights, really good advice to a younger self, Dave. Thank you very much indeed. We do a Pass the Question here on the show where guests have the opportunity to put a question to a future guest, whoever they may be. And from previous guest Phil Parker, who is VP for Technology, Strategy and AI Delivery at Equal Experts, we have this question for you.
With the rise of artificial intelligence, what aspects of human intelligence do you think will be most important or valuable in the future?
Wow, that's a great question. So I think AI will do more of the how, and humans need to do a lot more of the why and when. So AI is going to be great at executing, I don't want to call them scripts, but learned responses. Humans are still going to be needed to understand why and when we accept those responses, or what is maybe the best answer. So, for example, I have, 3 very well-known publicly available AI chat tools that I subscribe to. And sometimes when, I'm thinking about some of the bigger picture things within our company, I'll pose the same question to all 3, and I get obviously 3 very different answers. So the human still needs to understand when to apply AI and how to apply it and how to tweak the training. I think that's going to be, probably the biggest interfacing between human intelligence and AI intelligence from that perspective.
I'm sure Simon Sinek would also agree with it's all about the why, and that's the value that humans bring. Really thoughtful answer. Thank you very much indeed for that. Finally, what question would you like me to put to a future guest on a future episode of CXO Secrets?
Well, we talked all about edge today, so I would like to know from one of your future guests, what workload have you considered in your organization to move from a centralized cloud or SaaS environment out to the edge?
I look forward to hearing a response to that one. Dave, it's been great to speak to you again. And if people want to find out more about what Norseman does and what you do, where's the best place to reach out?
Norseman.com or odinsedge.ai, or you can find us on LinkedIn as well.
We'll make sure we include a link to those in the description. But for now, Dave Hoon, thanks for joining us again on CXO Secrets.
Thank you, David. Have a great day.